Another job search tool that has emerged over the past few years is the career portfolio.
A career portfolio represents a body of work over time. It represents that which you want to portray to an employer. So it represents not just a period of time, but a longitudinal look at your abilities over a long period of years.
Most portfolios are zippered 3-ring binders that contain your resume, cover letter, expanded job objective, letters of reference from former employers or people familiar with your abilities, work samples, copies of any degrees or certificates you've earned, awards, electronic storage media presenting examples of video or website work, and other related materials that can help you get a job.
Items that you include in your portfolio are dependent on the job for which you are seeking. I always suggest to people that they always have in hand a generic portfolio ready to go that has resumes, that has letters of reference, that has items that document your competency in a particular area. However, as you go to interview for a particular job, you'll want to make sure that you research that job and make sure that your portfolio then represents the specifics of that job.
Some occupations, for example, a graphic design person or a person who wants to work in a newspaper, it's pretty clear what kinds of things they would put in their portfolio to take to an employer. But there are some other occupations that might not be as obvious. Let's take someone who works in food service as an example. What could they put in there? They can't bring in the salads that they make very easily. So what would you do? Well, I can think of a few things. One, you can certainly have a good resume in there. And you might have letters of reference, commendations if you've done work, if you've had particularly good grades and culinary arts of some kind. Well, get statements from your supervisor, your teachers, and take the strongest statements out there, put them on a page, make them big, so you can put that in your portfolio because an employer would be interested in those kinds of things. You could take photographs of things that you've made, tables that you've set, the crowds that you've organized an event for. It's one thing to say that you put together a fancy dessert menu, a coffee and dessert menu, say. It's another thing to provide a photograph of 100 people sitting down having a good time at a wedding. Again, the whole idea is to present yourself, the things that you know how to do, to a prospective employer. When you get down to that point, it's not just information for yourself, but it's information for others. So think about what would be most helpful.
To gather materials for your portfolio, create a series of file folders to organize materials related to your work. Name each folder in a way that makes sense for you and keep them all together. Later, you can use these files to assemble things into a portfolio to present to an employer. Select items that best present your background for the particular job you want now.
But generally, when you're taking something to an employer, then you take out those things that don't make so much sense for that context. And you'd whittle down a portfolio to include only those things that you might want to show an employer.
So if you're interviewing in a marketing area, you'll want to make sure that your portfolio is tuned specifically to the needs that that employer will be looking for. But you'll never want to keep separate portfolios that are specific to job areas. If you keep one generic one and then tune that to a specific needs, it will be much easier and much more effective.
During the interview, you can use your portfolio to answer questions or show examples of your work.
When you bring your portfolio to the interview, you will want to wait for that time in the interview when it's appropriate to bring that out. We see employers wanting to direct the interview. He or she will come in with their specific goals. They know the type of person they're looking for. They know the context in which they're working. They know the type of personality, the type of background that will match that context. And so you'll want to bring it out at an opportune time when an employer asks you to speak to a certain ability, to a certain accomplishment. And you can speak to that and then pull out the portfolio and say, let me show you what I mean. Or, for example, if you look at this artifact, you'll see an example of when whatever the issue was that was asked. So have it ready, but don't necessarily assume that the employer is going to look at it, and wait for that moment when you know that what is in that portfolio is really going to represent that particular issue being asked of you.
But in general, it's something to help you in a career way, to remember and recollect kind of things that are important to you and collect information. And then for an employer, then you have a subset of those things that you think would be important for them to see or that they might be interested in. So it takes a form that makes sense for what you're trying to do.